You need to leave. This lounge is for real clients. Jennifer Harper's voice cut through the quiet like a slap. At 10:17 a.m. on a humid Miami morning, inside the marble-lined private client lounge of Apex Wealth Bank, those words hit Diana Monroe hard. Diana Monroe, 46, walked into the branch in dark wash jeans, a pale blue cashmere sweater, and simple black loafers. She didn't look like the CEO of Apex Enterprises, the multi-billion-dollar conglomerate that had acquired Apex Wealth Bank 2 years earlier. That was intentional. This morning was a test. She approached the front desk and requested access to the private lounge to complete a $5 million withdrawal. But the moment she sat down, calm shattered. Jennifer Harper, 43, the branch manager, strode over. "We'll need proof of where your funds came from," she said coldly. Diana had seen this before. At 23, when her account was frozen for unusual activity. At 26, when a loan officer called her high risk. And now, 2 decades and $8 billion later, here it was again. Before Jennifer could review Diana's documents, Marcus Sullivan, 45, a white investment banker in an expensive gray suit, sneered as he walked past. With one flick of his wrist, he knocked Diana's tablet off the desk. "Don't clog up the line, sweetheart." Rebecca Chun, 29, a private banker, crossed her arms. "That amount of cash doesn't add up. You could have stolen it." Diana blinked slowly. "Run my name." Jennifer shook her head. "You're not verified. This isn't a walk-in center." In the back corner, Daniel Reed, a 31-year-old tech entrepreneur, began filming with his phone. "Don't," Diana said firmly. "We settle this with facts, not footage." A tall black man in a gray suit, James Porter, 40, walked over to Daniel. "Brother, put that down. This is bigger than one clip." Diana met Daniel's eyes. "Words. Use your words." Sophia Martinez, 28, sat silently to Gia. Naz left, hands clutching her purse. She finally whispered, "This is foul." Diana turned her head. "Speak up. Let them hear it." Sophia stood. "She's not the problem." "You are," she said, pointing at Jennifer and Rebecca. Marcus leaned against a nearby pillar, smirking. "You all really think this woman has $500,000 sitting in an account here? Pawn shop's down the street." He slipped a folded note across the floor. Sophia bent down and read aloud. "Go to a pawn shop." A collective gasp followed. "That's enough," Diana said, voice rising but composed. "You're destroying this institution with every word." Jennifer smirked. "You're not a client. You're a con artist." Diana pulled out her phone and dialed. "Sarah, start Protocol 6. On the other end, Sarah Davis, her executive assistant, didn't miss a beat. "It's ready, ma'am." "You're going to regret this," Diana said. "Not because I'll scream, but because you just told the wrong woman she doesn't belong in the bank she owns." Jennifer scoffed. "Delusions don't scare me." Rebecca pulled out a landline receiver. "Calling security now." "She's a fraud." Diana didn't move. She held her ground with the same stillness that had guided her through 14 acquisitions and a global recession. "She's a fraud, Thomas. Throw her out." Jennifer barked it loud enough for the entire lounge to hear. Assistant Manager Thomas Klein, 48, stepped forward reluctantly. Marcus added fuel. "She stole that money. Why hasn't she been arrested yet?" Sophia stood up. "Enough. You're all out of line. You don't even know her." Marcus laughed. "Oh, we know the type." Daniel looked to Diana. "I should be recording this." Diana shook her head. "Words, not lenses." James stepped closer to Daniel. "Let your voice work, not your camera." Rebecca took a sharp breath. "You're making a scene." Diana's voice cut through. "You called security on me for existing. That's the only scene here." Thomas spoke, voice low. "Do you have any account verification?" Diana dialed Sarah. "Sarah, they've escalated it. Proceed to phase 2. Sarah's voice came through steady. "Confirmed. I've logged the escalation. Internal audit will hear this." "They'll hear everything," Diana replied. Jennifer waved Thomas off. "Don't entertain this." Marcus chimed in. "She's probably filming some social stunt." Daniel stepped forward, forgetting the camera. "She's not filming. But I stopped because she asked us to speak, not post." Sophia didn't sit. Security for what? A withdrawal? Jennifer raised her voice. You're all being manipulated. Diana turned to face her. You sound afraid. That's the sound of your job slipping away, Jennifer. Jennifer hissed. Threats. Diana didn't blink. No, just a mirror. Sarah's voice returned. Diana, I've elevated the incident to our corporate ethics board. They're monitoring live. Diana nodded once. Keep the line open. Thomas turned slowly. Jennifer, what if she's right? Jennifer stared at him like he'd betrayed her. Don't be naive. Diana stood up, steady and calm. You asked for proof. You accused me of fraud. You call me a thief. You triggered a security call. You mocked how I dressed. And I'm still standing here. Why do you think that is? The silence was immediate. Sophia walked to Diana's side. What now? Diana said. We wait. The truth is coming whether they want it or not. Jennifer folded her arms. You're bluffing. Marcus barked. If she had money, she'd show it. You people always act entitled. James turned sharply. You people. Thomas sat down. This isn't how we should treat people. Diana spoke to Sarah again. Have you started phase 3? Sarah replied. Already underway. Jennifer's compliance reports are being pulled. 8 prior service complaints involved women of color, all filed under unverified and never escalated. Diana closed her eyes briefly. Thank you, Sarah. Don't. Stop. Sophia's voice cracked. They're trying to erase us with policy, with tone, with fake concern. Diana placed a hand on her shoulder. Not today. Jennifer smirked. You think your little phone call will change anything? Diana's gaze sharpened. No, but I'm here to end this branch's legacy of silence. Suddenly, Rebecca stepped toward Diana and picked up the fallen tablet. Without a word, she tossed it aside where it skidded across the floor. Stolen junk? She muttered. Diana's eyes narrowed. That was yours to destroy, or just your impulse to control. Thomas shook his head. She's gone too far. Diana spoke again. Every second you spend talking instead of reflecting is a second closer to the end of your employment. Call the police. She's a financial threat. Rebecca didn't hesitate. She picked up the landline and dialed. Yes, we have a woman here attempting to withdraw funds under false pretenses. High amount possibly stolen. Diana sat motionless. You just made a federal false report. I hope you're ready to explain it in court. Jennifer scoffed. We protect the institution, not the imposters. She turned to Thomas. Get her out now. Thomas didn't move. She hasn't even raised her voice. That's what scares you, isn't it? Marcus stepped forward. She's laundering money. That's obvious. He waved a platinum business card in the air. This woman is nothing. Jennifer stepped behind Diana's chair. Show me your financial history right now. If you're legit, prove it. The security lead, Ryan Hayes, 34, arrived. What's going on here? Rebecca pointed at Diana. She's a suspected fraud. We've requested verification. She's refused. Ryan nodded and walked over. I need your bag and your tablet. He didn't ask. He reached. When Diana didn't immediately move, Ryan shoved her purse off the seat. You're being detained for noncompliance. James stepped forward. That is not legal. She hasn't broken a single law. Diana's eyes locked on Ryan's face. Touch me again, and I will personally make sure Apex Wealth pays for it. Ryan raised an eyebrow. Lady, I don't care what you threaten. You don't belong here. James moved between them. Step back, man. Ryan held firm. You interfering now? I'm protecting a client, James said. Daniel stood from the corner, holding his phone higher. This needs to be seen. Diana's voice cracked with fury. Daniel, don't. We don't need their eyes. We need their ears. Daniel lowered his phone. Then say it louder. Diana turned to Jennifer. You demand my history like I owe you my ditty. But I don't owe this room anything. I've earned more than anyone in here. So instead of asking where my money came from, maybe ask why you think you have the right to question it. Sarah's voice came through the phone, steady and deliberate. Diana, Protocol 6 is now fully active. Apex's compliance board has flagged Jennifer's employee record. I've also linked Marcus's prior formal warning for verbal misconduct. Diana didn't smile. Let it all run. Jennifer leaned forward, almost growling. You won't get away with this. Diana replied. You mean being black, wealthy, and patient? I've done it for 20 years. Thomas backed away, mumbling, "This is not what I signed up for." Then came the crack. Thomas's voice, low but clear. "I need to say something. Jennifer, Rebecca, what we're doing is wrong." Jennifer's eyes went wide. "Don't you dare." Thomas looked at the floor. Rebecca wanted the police here. She didn't even run the verification. She said bringing them in would shut her down fast. Rebecca gasped. "You liar." Thomas nodded. "I was there. You said it knowing who she might be." Marcus shouted. "You're turning on your team for her. She's bluffing." Diana stood slowly, then called the bluff. She lifted her voice powerfully. "I am Diana Monroe, CEO of Apex Enterprises, owner of Apex Wealth Bank. And every second you've spent humiliating me has been recorded, logged, and witnessed." Clients stared, frozen. Jennifer's face lost its color. Thomas didn't move. Rebecca backed toward the wall. Ryan blinked like he'd seen a ghost. Then clients started clapping, slowly, then all at once. James stepped forward. "I knew I'd seen you before. Forbes. 2 years ago. Your company turned this bank around." Sophia stood, tears in her eyes. "She's our CEO," Daniel whispered. "I should have filmed this part." Diana looked around. "The problem wasn't that you didn't know who I was. The problem is how you treated someone you thought didn't matter." Jennifer stammered. "You set us up." Diana answered, "No, I tested you and you failed." From the corner, the sound of sirens grew faint. Police were coming, but the real justice had already walked through the door. "Detain her now before she disappears." Jennifer's voice cracked with desperation as she pointed at Diana. Ryan stepped forward, reaching for Diana's arm. But Diana didn't move. "Touch me, and you'll lose more than your job." Sophia stepped between them. "Back up. You saw what she just said. She owns this place." The double doors pushed open, and 2 uniformed police officers stepped inside. One officer, a white man in his 40s, raised a brow. "We got a report of a fraud attempt. Can someone tell us what's going on?" Rebecca stepped forward. "She's impersonating a high-net-worth client. She demanded $500,000 in cash with no verification. This could be federal-level theft." Diana didn't blink. "I'd like to make a statement, but not yet." A soft voice broke through. "They're lying." Every head turned. It was Mia Brooks, a 24-year-old black woman in a denim jacket, seated quietly near the glass divider. "They did it to me, too. 2 weeks ago," she said, standing slowly. "I came in to open a photography business account. Rebecca refused to run my EIN. She said we don't open accounts for Freelink. Heirs with inconsistent histories." Rebecca spun toward her. "That's not true." Mia raised her phone. "I recorded it. Didn't post it, but it's time someone did." Gasps echoed through the room. One officer turned to Rebecca. "Ma'am, did you make that call knowing she owns this bank?" Rebecca's face lost its color. She didn't own it at the time. Diana turned slowly. "I've owned it for nearly 2 years, which means what you just said is either a lie or a confession." Daniel whispered. She didn't have to shout. "She's the camera now." James looked to the officers. "Gentlemen, I think you're witnessing the end of a system, one that protected people like Rebecca, Jennifer, and Marcus." The officer nodded. "We're not making any arrests, but we'll be writing a report, a full one." Sarah's voice came through Diana's phone. "Diana, corporate has received the Mia Brooks complaint. It was buried. Rebecca flagged it as ineligible for review. That violates compliance policy 4.3. Diana nodded. "And Jennifer's role?" Sarah answered. "She signed off on the rejection." Diana turned to Jennifer. "You told me to leave. You refused my ID. You call me a con artist, and now you want to hide behind Rebecca's bad paperwork." Jennifer's hands trembled. "You dressed like you didn't belong here. I made a judgment call." Diana stepped forward. "That wasn't judgment. That was bias." Marcus, still lingering at the edge, scoffed. "We're all being dramatic. I'm leaving." Sophia shouted, "No, you don't. You were part of this." Marcus snapped. "You people are always so loud." "You people." Daniel said. "You mean the woman who owns the bank?" James stepped between Marcus and the rest. "Leave now, man. That card you wave around won't protect you." Marcus turned toward the door, but one officer said, "Sir, we'll need your statement before you go." He paused, then slowly sat down. Defeated, Diana turned back to the police. I'd like to de-escalate this in-house. No arrests. Not yet. I want people to speak. I want the room to understand what happened here. One officer nodded. You sure about that? Completely, Diana said. She turned to Mia. You're brave. You should never have had to be. Mia replied. I just wanted to open an account. That's all. Diana placed her hand over her heart. And from today forward, you'll never be treated like that again. Your account will be opened personally by the executive board, fee-free. James turned to Diana. You didn't just stop a system, you exposed it. Diana looked at him. And now I'm going to dismantle it. Behind her, Jennifer muttered, this was never supposed to happen. Thomas stood beside her, quiet. It was always going to happen. We just didn't think we'd get caught. Ryan took a step toward the exit. Diana raised a hand. Stay. You'll need to hear what comes next, because your name's on the file too. Sarah's voice came back. Apex compliance officers are arriving within 10 minutes. They've requested Diana lead the internal debrief and approved full authority to act. Diana smiled faintly. Good, because I've been ready for this day longer than they know. Enough. Diana's voice didn't rise, but it silenced the entire room. She stepped forward, no longer seated, no longer patient. Her presence filled the space like the weight of a verdict. For 10 minutes, I've endured slurs, suspicion, and slander inside a building that bears my company's name. So, allow me to remove all doubt. She reached into her tablet case and pulled out a small black folder embossed with the gold Apex Wealth Bank logo. She opened it carefully and turned it toward the nearest officer and then to the room. Inside, a corporate ID, a notarized certificate, and a letter of authority signed by the board of directors. My name is Diana Monroe. I am the founder and CEO of Apex Enterprises. I own 81% of Apex Wealth Bank. And starting today, I will no longer tolerate misconduct under this roof. The reaction was instant. Jennifer's jaw dropped. Thomas stepped backward, face ashen. Rebecca staggered into a chair. Ryan's hands fell from his belt. Even Marcus leaned forward in stunned silence. Sarah's voice crackled through the phone. Diana has full termination authority as listed under Apex Compliance Directive 4B. You may proceed, ma'am. Diana didn't smile. She turned and faced the staff directly. Jennifer Harper, you're fired. Effective immediately for racial bias, abuse of position, and obstruction of client services. Jennifer's mouth opened, but no sound came. Thomas Klein, you're fired. Not just for complicity, but for standing silent while a client was profiled, accused, and humiliated. Thomas simply lowered his head. Rebecca Chun, you're terminated for knowingly fabricating a client risk report, triggering a false police call, and burying bias complaints. You broke the system from the inside. Rebecca let out a sharp breath. I didn't know. I didn't know it was you. Diana didn't flinch. And if it had been someone else? Rebecca's lips parted. She stopped. There was no defense. Ryan Hayes, you're dismissed for aggression, unlawful detainment attempt, and failure to de-escalate. Ryan stood tall, but didn't respond. He just turned and walked to the far end of the lounge. And Marcus Sullivan, you're banned from all Apex-affiliated institutions, effective immediately for harassment, racism, and documented misconduct. Marcus jumped up. You can't ban me. I'm worth more to this bank than half the people in here. Sophia shouted. Not today, you're not. Diana raised her hand calmly. We don't build institutions to serve the loudest ego. We build them to protect the quiet dignity of people who walk in expecting fairness. The room erupted in applause. Not performative or polite, but carrying years of pent-up injustice in its rhythm. James stood with a quiet nod. That was justice in real time. Mia, still standing off to the side, had tears in her eyes. I thought I'd ever be seen. Not really. Diana looked at her, voice softening. You weren't just seen today. You were believed. As the officers began to exit, Rebecca suddenly spoke, her voice cracked and raw. Wait, I need to say something. The room quieted. Diana turned. Speak. Rebecca took a breath, so deep it shook her shoulders. I buried 8 complaints in the last year. All of them came from women of color. I flagged them as duplicates, unverifiable, or outside policy windows. I did it to keep our numbers clean. Thomas knew. I told him. He told me to do what I had to. A gasp rippled through the lounge. Thomas didn't look up. Diana turned to Sarah. Can you confirm that? Sarah's voice returned without hesitation. Confirmed. We've located those complaint records and audio files. Rebecca's voice is on 2 of them. Thomas's signature is on 4. Rebecca sat down, shaking. I didn't know how to stop. I thought if I didn't follow, I'd be next. Diana approached slowly. You weren't a follower. You were the one holding the torch while others burned. But today, I'm putting that fire out. Rebecca didn't respond. She wept quietly into her hands. Diana turned back to the room. For those still standing in this lounge, I want you to understand something. Ownership isn't just a legal document or a title. It's a responsibility. And my responsibility is to make sure this never happens again. Not here. Not on my watch. Sarah's voice followed once more. Corporate has initiated full disciplinary review and operational audit for the branch. Diana, the floor is yours to lead reform. Diana looked around the room at James, Sophia, Mia, Daniel, the clients who had rallied, the strangers who had stayed silent, but now looked changed. Then let's begin, because this bank no longer answers to people like Jennifer. It answers to the people it was built to serve. And with those words, the to reform didn't just open. It stayed open wide enough for the future to walk through with dignity. Diana didn't wait for the applause to fade. She walked to the center of the lounge and said, this isn't just about what they did. It's about what we're going to do now. Effective immediately, all branch operations are paused. No new transactions, no account actions, no client meetings until we reset what this institution stands for. The clients nodded. Some clapped. We're launching the Apex Equity Program today, not next quarter. And we're doing it right here in this room. This branch will be the first test site for verbal audits, active diversity accountability, and a face-to-face values pledge for every single staff member who wants to stay employed. Sarah's voice came through on speaker. I've drafted the documentation. Internal ethics officers will arrive within the hour. Corporate has signed off. Sophia raised her hand. What's a verbal audit? Diana turned to her gently. It means we don't just check numbers. We track words, what's said, what's omitted, and who's treated like a burden just for walking through the door. James nodded. That changes everything. Daniel whispered. That makes it human. Diana smiled faintly. That's the point. Just then, in the silence that followed, Ryan cleared his throat. Everyone turned. He didn't look angry. He looked tired. I need to say something. I didn't just fail to stop what happened. I helped plan it. The air shifted. Diana's expression sharpened, but she didn't speak. Ryan continued. Rebecca came to me 2 months ago. She said corporate was sniffing around for non-compliance and that Jennifer had a plan to bury the red flags. My job was to make sure anyone who complained got quietly removed from the space before it turned into paperwork. The room was dead quiet. She said, the less we see, the less we write. So I followed it. I flagged certain clients as elevated risk based on how they looked, how they asked questions, whether they challenged fees. Sophia's face darkened. That's profiling. Ryan nodded. I knew it. I did it anyway. He looked at Diana. You gave me a job. I turned it into a shield for the wrong people. Diana stepped forward slowly. Did Thomas know? He knew enough to never ask questions. Ryan said. Sarah's voice came in again. Diana, we've located 3 compliance reports that were altered after escalation. Ryan's name is on all of them. Ryan didn't argue. I deserve to be held accountable. But I didn't come clean to save myself. I came clean because watching you stand in this room and say what you said, I realized I've never worked for someone I respected before. Diana didn't soften. You nearly got me arrested. You intimidated people who came here in good faith. And now you want grace. Ryan shook his head. I want consequence, and I'll take it. But I also want you to know there's more. There's a list, a private tag in the CRM system used to mark problem clients. And that list is longer than you think. Sarah replied instantly. I'll pull it now. We'll freeze access and start a forensic review. Diana turned to the room. This is why we reform. Not tomorrow, not at a retreat. Right here in this space where silence let bias grow. Today, we rooted out. Clients began to clap, not because they were relieved, but because they were ready. Sophia stepped beside Diana. Let us help. Diana nodded. We'll do it together, starting with truth. And the room, once poisoned by silence, began to transform, with voices raised, with truths confessed, and with a culture finally cracked, wide open for light to enter. Diana stood tall as the last echoes of applause faded. Not in triumph, but in clarity. She scanned the private lounge, no longer just a waiting area, but now the front line of transformation. Summit compliance officers had arrived and were already reviewing flag reports. One officer handed Diana a short printed document. These are the provisional action items approved by the board. She read it silently, then nodded. We begin here. She turned to the room. Effective immediately, Apex Wealth will mandate verbal conduct audits at all high net worth branches. No more hiding bias behind silence. Every branch will follow our example, starting today in Miami. Sarah's voice followed swiftly. Corporate has also terminated Marcus Sullivan's accounts and initiated a formal review of his investment firm for internal bias violations. Diana looked toward the vacant seat where Marcus had stood. He had influence, but not character. Sophia stepped closer. So what now? What happens after today? Diana turned to her. We build something that doesn't just react to injustice, but prevents it. That's the legacy I want to leave. Daniel added. You did more than fire a team. You exposed a mindset. Diana gave a faint, tired smile. Then we keep exposing it until it can't grow in the dark anymore. Just as she turned back toward the compliance team, a voice rose from the back. Older, raspier, uncertain. There's one more thing. Heads turned. It was an elderly white man in a pressed gray suit, his Apex client badge clipped to his lapel. My name's Harold Langford. I retired from banking 10 years ago. I used to oversee training for this region. His voice shook. I trained Jennifer and Thomas, and even Rebecca when she was fresh. And I'll admit something I've never said publicly. We taught them to prioritize appearance. Not openly, not with words like race or class, but with terms like client quality, suitability, and preferred posture. We never told them to reject women like you, but we gave them a system where rejection happened anyway. The room froze. Harold stepped forward. I've watched today with shame, and I want to be on record saying this started long before Jennifer. I helped build the bias, and I want to help tear it down. Diana walked toward him. Why? Now. He swallowed. Because watching you dismantle it with nothing but your voice made me realize I had mine the whole time and never used it. She paused. Then use it now. He turned toward the compliance officers. I'd like to give a full deposition and assist with training reform. One officer nodded and escorted him aside. Sarah's voice came through again. Diana, I finished the review of that client flag list I mentioned. 17 individuals marked as potential security risk had no prior incidents. 15 of them were Black or Hispanic. It's being submitted now for internal audit and external review. Diana took a deep breath, eyes briefly closing. Then it's official. This wasn't a case. It was a culture. Sophia reached out and touched Diana's shoulder. And you didn't just fight it. You broke it wide open. Mia, standing quietly, added, I came here to start a business, and somehow you gave me a future too. Diana turned to her and smiled. You still will. And this time you'll do it in a bank that actually sees you. She looked around one last time at the walls that had once contained prejudice, at the faces that now carried understanding. And then she spoke to all of them, to the world watching beyond that lounge. Let this be the last time silence walks away stronger than truth. Let this be the moment we remember that justice doesn't come from hashtags. It comes from who we choose to be when no one's filming. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't slam my hand. I stood still and spoke clearly. If I can do that here, then so can you, wherever you are. And as she turned to lead the compliance officers into the branch's inner offices, Sarah's final words echoed through the speaker. Apex Wealth will never be the same. And that's exactly the point. The door closed softly behind them. But the message, the lesson, and the legacy stayed right there in the lounge. where silence was finally broken for good.